Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today we're lucky to have Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much for having me on again.
Yeah, my pleasure. And finally, we can resume our shows after this horrible winter and all this situation which affected all of us. I was lucky to spend a couple of weeks in Curacao with a little bit of a milder climate, let's put it this way. And now back to reality. And the chess world continues to go on, and so many things happening. Vacancy just over, Ken. What would you like to tell us about it?
Oh, we could do three shows on Vacancy alone.
Yeah,
It was actually a very eventful tournament. There are a lot of stories that are worthwhile. In fact, I could easily not even mention that fellow American Andy Woodward won the Challengers and will play in the Masters because we also had Vasil Ivanchuk coming within half a point of him. Terrific spring of youth result. We had Carissa yet just barely missing her last GM norm, but having some very strong games there. And but that's not even the story of that tournament. The story of the challengers after 5 rounds was Faustino Oro, the 14-year-old Argentinian kid, getting off to a 4-1 start. He then
incredible.
regressed toward the mean, but he still finished with the plus score. And that's only the challengers. Haven't even gotten into the main tournament where another kid, Yagis Khan or Dogmas of Turkey, rang some bells during the tournament. I'll show a couple of his games. But it was a very steady and sure performance by Norbek Abdusattorov. And we'll see if this class carries through into the candidates. Um,
Yes.
so, and there were some notable blunders, especially in the first round, when maybe the chess was affected by a demonstration that delayed the first round, um, and by more than an hour. And that did register on my meter, but then the tournament leveled off. So there
Hmm.
were really great moves and a lot of blunders. So I have a bunch of games. And so in some games, I have only moves, but let's actually begin with Ivanchuk. Let's begin with people in our range of the spectrum. Okay, so let's actually see him playing black against a very strong player, up and coming, as you can tell from the photo, young player Aydin Soleimani. Okay. So the thing about Ivanchuk is that no Berlins or no threat of Berlin making you play Giocco piano. None of those tabias. This is the Najdorf.
Yep.
And he plays some, white plays f4. Okay, so white's not playing it safe either. Queen c7, bishop e2, e6. White plays this line. I'm no theoretical maven at all, but I know it's a line to put the bishop there early. Um, and the players castle, white plays king h1, getting pressure off the long of the g1 to a7 diagonal. Um, Now white regroups, preventing exchanges, normal development for black. Black regroups, and now white goes for kingside play, but black can just roll with it. So, as tell from the engine evaluation, white has a normal opening edge of about zero point 0.3, but everything to play for is a dynamic fighting position. So black makes a feint at playing b4, and now it was really guarding b5 so that you can play a5. And it's a question of how long it's going to take white to get the pawn storm rolling on the king side. So rook e8, a move that Kasparov showed the virtues of 40 years ago in the matches against Karpov, um, makes f8 available to some pieces. So now, again, we can just lay back and react solidly to white's aggression on the king side. Okay, so white still has the zero point 0.3 opening edge. The players have been playing very accurately. Um, over here. Now black's turn to play, and now we start mixing it up. White plays knight b5. And funny is that now the engine is saying 0.6 advantage, but this is really just the players have dropped the gloves and whatever, and now really mixing with each other. So competitively, the score from the engine doesn't really mean so much except as a starting point. And now it's going to be a question of, can black take over the b5 square and win material? White now presses the attack. And this, most natural move on the board, finger the weakness on d5. The engine says somehow, without any orange showing on the screen, that white has lost the edge, but this is just a competitive position. So what the engine wants white to do is commit to the kingside pawn storm by playing rook f4, rook h8. But it's a completely natural move. But the benefit of black's setup is that you're able to roll with it. Okay, but wait a second. Technically, Ivanchuk put the wrong knight on e5. No, okay. So we're going to see a tactical aspect of this position that's very subtle in a few more moves. Okay. So once again, all right, it's 0.3 advantage to black, but there's really everything to play for both sides. Okay, so this is technically a mistake, but how are we going to prove it? What tactics are going to matter? And it turns out that the tactic that is going to matter in this position is whether white's queen getting to the e7 square can take something with check. So I'm not kidding. Okay, so this now black's pieces are kind of at optimal efficiency, except for the knight on d8 is just getting itself out of the way. And again, a natural move, technically a mistake, but we're playing chess here. So now, so Soleimani does the judgment. It's a misjudgment to trade two pieces for a rook. Could have just played bishop g1, but then, then black's knight on d8 enters the game, and black's pieces are a little better than white. It's going to c5 next, and on c5, it's going to hit c4, and that's the a4 pawn is the linchpin holding white's position together. Okay, so white trades two pieces for a rook, hoping that the center roller will take over. But black able to meet, this is terrific fighting chess from Ivanchuk, able to meet the center roller right away, and instead splintered white's pawns. And now Ivanchuk has calculated this line, and it should work, except for placing the rook on this square is a mistake. So why does black even want to move that rook? Black should just capture on b4, b5, and get on with things. But if you are going to move the rook, the place to move it was b8. Okay, and this is very subtle. This is enabling eventually an attack on the diagonal to white's king. That's the point of moving the rook off b7. Now Ivanchuk played it to b6, and this could have allowed white back into the game. So to get back into the game, you take this knight, then black captures here. Okay, white captures, bishop takes a3, rook takes a3. Okay, we come down here and we win white's rook with check, but now white has a fork. It's a fork of queen knight checkmate, and you can't take the queen because then white's pawn will become a queen. And actually what black can do is give perpetual check, because also very interesting here. So the difference is if black's rook were on b8, then this wouldn't be a fork of the knight, and black would still win. The most interesting fact is white can't try to win, because then black plays knight e6. And when white takes the knight, this is check, trading queens and winning. So one inaccuracy by Ivanchuk that really takes some very deep play to avail. But it's a fighting game. White brought a knight into the center, and now Ivanchuk finished off in very great style. That was the idea of rook b6, was to clear b7 for the bishop. We're going to put pressure on that diagonal, which Ivanchuk established by breaking up white center. Now rook e6, beautiful lift of the rook. Now putting pressure on the defender of d5. White's king tries to get out of the way. Okay, Black's rook moves. There's not much White can do. We're just going to build up on d5. And in fact, here Soleimani gave up. So
Very, very interesting game, unusual positions. Great play by Ivanchuk.
Right, and enterprising,
Yeah.
Hope to see how chess does that. Okay, so I'm just going to go in order. Maybe there would be a more thematic order. But
Okay.
here is play, in a winning position. So this, if you play over this whole game, it's really Black's opening ideas are just wrong. So White already has a notable edge. So there's something about this line that just isn't good for Black. So this is actually out of the Petrov. Okay. So this might be a dynamic a position that's been underestimated for White to play in the Petrov. Anyway, from this position on, Erdogan just plays very incisively. I mean, maybe everything wins, even capturing on c8, which the computer regards as best move. But, okay, it's not the computer's best move, but it gets a double exclam. Well, it's just a temporary sack because knight takes f7 check is defended. Now we capture on c8, and now this gets the tempo on the rook on c8, and now we're hitting h6. Okay, we come in here, and now the really nice move to cash this in after the rook lift. Rook f6, knight takes h6. And queen f7, Black just can't get enough blockers in place. So the position falling apart. And after a few more moves, the distinctive thing about this game is Fedoseev, a 2700 player, allowed himself to be checkmated. So he had mate on the board.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, going along. So now I want to show some of Faustino Oro's brilliancy. Now, after this game, he was 4 out of 5, okay, playing against Liu Maoyi. And it could show the entire game. Again, he's played a very active, enterprising style. He's not developed the c8 bishop. The next play is rook to e5. So this is definitely a way to play as Black. But he played rook c8, hitting the bishop and tempting White. Bishop b1 was best, but that's abandoning the a4 pawn, so White would just use blues prosaically. Liu Maoyi's trying to plug up all the holes with queen d3, but now rook takes f5. We're going to take over the strong point on f5. Okay. Now knight e5, and it's difficult for White to keep 2 pieces on it. So queen b3, and now to complete the taking over, another exchange sacrifice. Rook takes c2. Okay, so brilliant double exchange combination. So White's up 2 exchanges, but we take over f5, and Oro has calculated that White is not going to be able to defend the squares on the king side. So queen c3, bishop e3. White can't move the f4 pawn because it's pinned. So something is landing on f3, and so Liu Maoyi gave up because see that what's just happening is just a wholesale collection of White's loose pieces. Okay.
It looks so simple, unbelievable.
Yeah, makes chess look simple, but
Yeah.
but again, the whole game is worth playing over. I'm not taking time to do so because I want to play over this game last. Now I want to show another missed opportunity, another important move juncture, and I can actually do the whole opening up to this juncture. Carissa Yip's missed chance, although not completely, in the next to last round, in a game she actually wound up losing, where even a draw would have given her the GM norm. So she plays against the French, and this is the bishop g5 variation. Okay, so definitely going for an attack. She doesn't play h4 here, though, even though the computer regards the h4 gambit as being the best move, at least the data point I'm getting here. Okay, so we're still going to play in the center. So black bravely castles, bishop d3, and then c5, and then knight f3. And it's curious, black has to defend with f5 or f6 right away. This move allows the Greek gift sacrifice. And the thing is, it's very easy to calculate the consequences that it forces black to give up his queen. This is a sort of open and shut case of it. Usually in this sacrifice, white has to play knight g5, and you have to calculate king g6, and it gets a little tricky. But white can just play queen h5, knight g5, and automatically black has to give up the queen, otherwise it's immediate mate. And then the question is, are black's 3 pieces enough for the queen? So I don't know if Yip, I haven't looked to see whether Yip saw this and rejected this, because black has 3 pieces for the queen, and white's center pawn is falling as well. But in fact, if you look a little more ahead, white is still able to attack. White will have time to castle, play rook f3 and h3 and pawn storm, and black can't develop the queenside pieces enough to defend this position. So I mean, obviously the computer is not saying black gets checkmated, but that is the windup of this position. Okay, another move juncture. So this was a game between Yagis or Erdogmas and Gukesh. Gukesh had a very much up and down tournament, ultimately down. And this game could have been one of the downers. So Erdogmas missed a great opportunity, except right now the game is even. Okay, so they've been playing this again in a 4 knights game this time. Okay, and reached this, challenging position, though it could peter out to a draw with certain play, but there are still fireworks going on in the game. So white plays knight d5, and so black is, by the way, ahead of pawn, and black will win another pawn. But white is threatening squares. Maybe white is threatening to trap black's bishop with queen c3 in this position. So it turns out black can hold the balance by playing rook c8, giving up the a pawn, and making sure that black's bishop will live. But black took the pawn and allowed white to play the idea of winning in exchange, forky queen and rook. Okay, so we won the exchange. Black can't take white's queen. So the question is, which exchange down positions are okay for black? So black could have just played bishop d3, and we're holding on to 2 pawns, although 1 pawn is kind of gnarly for the exchange. And white has a half pawn advantage, but it's not terrible. However, Gukesh played this, which is trying really to profit by entombing white's queen. So if white's queen is to go to a7, now black will have the initiative, and black actually can mount a light squares attack on white's king, and white's queen will be powerless to prevent it. Okay. So, however, there's a tactical flaw in this that Erdogmas, already down to just 8 minutes on the clock at move 28, and there's no increment, didn't take enough time to find. So it turns out white can play this, and then after queen a7, when it looks like, again, now if queen a7, queen b4, white is really in trouble. But white can capture this rook, okay, and then play rook takes e4, and this pain of mate down there. And then after queen f8, white's still down material, but threatening the pin on the back rank. and now we just shoot the ducks in the blind. Okay, first the bishop, then the queen. Everything is coming off the board. So most unfortunate there to miss that chance. And so instead, Ordogmus captured on a6, thought he would be able to defend this, ending a queen down, but Gukesh is not the world champion for nothing. And Gukesh is again with one very slight, but that's, I don't even call that a mistake. There's a little bit of moving back and forth, but otherwise, this was a very well conducted endgame. Okay, so that leaves me just enough time to play what must count as the funniest game of the tournament. Mats Niemann overall played well. He finished with a +2 score. Definitely showed he belongs in the 2700 elite club. His being invited to Vaikonsei was a great development, because this was one of his plaints from 4 years ago, that he wouldn't get this kind of invitation. So anyway, so his chance to show his mettle against Gukesh. And this game will have a lot of analysis component to it. But here we go. Okay, so we are going to play. So it's Ruy Lopez for a while, but white plays the D3 line. So this merges a little bit with the Giocopiano family, except that black plays the early B5. So this, is now back in the Ruy Lopez family of openings. White is not trying to take over the center. In these positions, sometimes white even allows the queen side to get completely driven back, but is playing that eventually a build-up with C3 and D4 will come through the center. Plus black's pawn on B5 is often exposed. Okay, so we capture knight C3. So black responds. So Gukesh decided to capture on C3 to make a steady center. So for one thing, if white captures with bishop C3, white's bishops look good, but they actually bite on granite. And this is completely fine. So it's more enterprising for white to try to build up with the pawns in the center. Okay, and white takes the strategy of build up in the center to an unanticipated extreme in a few more moves. Okay, so now C4. Okay, so white comes in with the with this, and black's bishop is relocated, and so rook A1, queen B8. White has a little bit of initiative here. It looks like it, and so you'd think that white ought to be able to do something instead of just play knight E1 to not have the pawns doubled, or knight H4 maybe is another reasonable move. But black is threatening bishop E6, which would exchange a bishop and maybe wreck white's pawns. So Niemann decided to go for the gusto and sacrifice the knight for 2 pawns. There's going to be a mirror image later in this game. Okay, so impatient, still lots of time the players had. Miscalculated, certainly. So if white would be left alone, then white, would play F4 and D4 and have enough of a roller together with the 2 bishops to have compensation. Okay, but black, however, has pieces that can do things as well. So this move is queried. I think it's actually a good move. It's practical playing. Okay, so white can cut losses with F3 here, but be inferior without having much play. So so that's why the C5 gets a question mark, but I think it's an invalid reason. However, Niemann is Niemann. We're not going to cut losses. We're going to stop the queen exchange. This is white's thematic move. So now we see that Gukesh has calculated the dynamics of this phase of the game better. Black is going to make a foothold on the king side. So white attacks, but black is able to attack first. and now bring the knight to h5. And that's 4 pieces eyeing white's king, and that's 1 more piece than white has on the board. So something's going to give here. And this is very nice, taking over the f5 square. So white plays rook a4. It's overprotecting b4, making sure things don't happen on certain squares on the queen side. This again is another non-mistake. Okay, bishop d7 to c6 may be more incisive, but this is completely thematic, and it forces white to trade, else you really do lose f4. So now black's a piece up for 2 pawns, and an endgame should win. And black now plays model chess, makes weaknesses. If white had captured, then black would have had a breathing down on the f file and strong squares, so f5. And now rook d6 is a natural move, covering the weakness on d3, but not covering the weakness on b3. Okay, so Niemann, can only try to counterattack, but here we go. So guarding stuff, but this allows the rooks to come off the board. And that actually here is a subtle point. I mean, it's in the everything wins for black. It's maybe not a little bit, but I would have played knight f8 in this position to gain the tempo over certain lines. So technically it loses a little of the advantage, but I am going to capture the on d3, and the point is I'm going to be 1 move closer to having the knight on e6 and getting my king to f7 and battening the hatches down. Except maybe that's not even the most incisive way. Anyway, to play, Gukesh went for the capture on d3 right away to simplify the position. So it's only 1 pawn for the piece. There should be winning, although if you now play knight e7, then white can play king d4, and you can't quite get your king up in time to stop white from doing things. Although, as we'll see, this is a really paradoxical position. I mean, this is still winning for black, but it's considered a little trickier than people give it credit for. White might be able to trade off pairs of pawns. However, Gukesh, with 38 minutes left, and it's past turn 40, so he got the lump sum increment and has increment, decided to cut the Gordian knot. So he lost patience, and he sacrificed a knight for 2 pawns in the center. Okay, and the amazing thing is this is not a winning position. It looks like it should be, but it really has a very delicate dynamics to it. And the dynamics are that white needs to rustle up enough counterplay by bringing the king forward to keep black's pawns from advancing too far, but keep white's king within the zone that when black's pawns do advance, that white will be able to rush the king back enough time to sacrifice the bishop for that. So this is actually a beautiful play that is almost perfectly executed by Niemann. There's just 1 wobble. Okay. So Gukesh repeated moves and now decided to advance the pawns. Bishop b4 check is the only move to hold, but you need to penetrate the king. And now there are 2 moves to hold. There's the very cryptic bishop e1, or there's king d6. Okay. And you just have to calculate that your king still is not too far. But Niemann played it to d5, and it's very weird. Now g4 wins. Okay, mainly because white is wrong-footed. White's king can't come back usefully. And if white plays bishop e1 now, then the bishop is going to be vulnerable to checks in some of this area. And king d4, king e6, and now white's king is in the way of defending the pawn, and black is very well set up. So this is very subtle, but Lukash did not notice this, played knight f4 check, and that put things back on the drawing track for white. So now bishop a5, very important move. You could also play to d2, but any other square loses. But the point of bishop a5 is going to come out at the very end with the ability to give check on d8 in some positions. So now bishop a1. And now this is the type of line where white's king was able to come back in time. And so black cannot win this position. Black's king can't penetrate, and here they agreed to a draw. Let's see if I could find the line where it would be important that white would be able to give check on d8. Let's see if I can find that. I might not be able to find that. I haven't looked on this. So let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. It is in one of these lines.
Yeah, a very interesting end game. A lot of tactics, and finally it was drawn. Ken, thank you so much for today's program, and looking forward next week.
Yes, maybe more Vaighan, but also the beginnings of some other tournaments. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much again, and have a great weekend.
Okay.
And we'll see you next week.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.